everybody, quick note. Okay, so I wanted to make this video just real fast today, no big production. Thought, oh, I'll just shoot this outside, it's beautiful. So I set up my camera on my little tripod, sat down and looked over my notes for a couple minutes, pushed play and started recording. Well, I didn't realize that the camera had moved down and essentially chopped off the top of my head. I could go back and do the whole thing over again, but I'm just gonna leave it as it is. That's the way it's gonna be. I'm sure you don't care, but I just wanted to explain why the top of my head is chopped off. Cheers. Hello everyone, this is John Blackstone with Only Kid with a Camera, broadcasting from beautiful Seattle, Washington. Hey, I've been getting a lot of comments and questions on the Elton John video I made. So many people have been asking me if I know the story on why Elton fired Dee Murray and Nigel Olsson. Not just once, but 2 times. So I want to talk a little bit about what I know about that story. And I've been researching it and actually asking questions of the men themselves. So I have some interesting insights that I'd like to share with you. So when I was in Nashville, I actually worked with Dee Murray and Nigel Olsson. I met them in the early 90s when they were both living there, and I was a waiter at a restaurant and ended up waiting on Dee Murray one day, and that started a relationship with him. He ended up playing on my album, and then Nigel ended up playing on my album as well. When I was hanging out with Dee Murray, I had to ask him the question that I had been wanting to know and that any fan of the Elton John band wants to know: why did Elton fire you? His answer was, I don't know. It was stated with kind of a question mark, shrugging of the shoulders, I don't know. The thing I'll never forget is when I asked him about it, he said, when it happened, I was heartbroken. That was the word he used, and I'll never forget that word jumped out at me. Yeah, I'm trying to make a video here, and there's blue angels flying through the sky. They come to Seattle every summer, and we do a celebration here called Sea Fair, and the blue angels fly over Lake Washington. It's kind of cool. I hope they don't bomb me. Dee and Nigel and Davey and Elton had just finished recording Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, and Dee said that they were so excited about touring the music from that album. Dee also told me that it was actually management that called to let him know he would no longer be needed. And then I asked him about what happened in the 1980s, because the band had gotten back together, they made a couple albums and did some great tours. Just the same thing happened again. He received a call from management saying your services are no longer needed. So of course, when I worked with Nigel, I had to ask him the same question, and his response was essentially the same. I don't know. So I've had a lot of time to think about this. I've been, wondering about it since I was a kid when Rock of the Westies came out and I discovered that Dee and Nigel were no longer in the band. I was so disappointed by that. And through the decades, I've read every interview Elton ever did in that time period. The thing I remember him talking about is how he had grown tired of the band, sort of the tempo of the band. That basically he wanted the band to kind of like kick it up a notch, and he had grown tired and wanted to try something new. And that's of course what we've read from various people, that Elton was basically wanting a new sound, looking for something to reinvigorate him. Now, anyone that knows a lot about Elton John knows that he's a very impatient person and very impulsive. He tends to make quick decisions, knee-jerk decisions. So I do believe that there is truth in that, but I also believe there's a lot more that happened and that's going on beneath the surface. And this is what I think really was happening. On the 1974 tour, Elton played Madison Square Garden. We all know the very famous story. John Lennon came out on stage and played with Elton. Now, anyone that has seen interviews with Elton and the members of the band and people that were just there know that that was just a pinnacle experience, an unfathomably cool experience for Elton and the guys in the band and the people that were in the audience, for everyone. Now, I actually believe that was more than just a pinnacle moment for Elton musically. That was when he really felt the peak of excitement and thrill that he could experience as an artist. For him to be playing on stage with John Lennon, it really couldn't go any higher than that for him. And simultaneous with this, I also know that this is right at the point when Elton was just starting to mess around with pot And I don't know if he had tried cocaine yet. He had been really a straight-laced guy through most of the years of their touring. And then right in 74, he started messing around, taking his first taste of those things. So he's had this incredible experience, career peak that is unimaginable, playing on stage with John Lennon. There's only 3 other guys that can really claim that. So I believe that the high, the euphoria of his fame, his success that began when he came to America in 1970 and just ramped up till 1974, I believe that he was riding on the wave of that adrenaline and that euphoria, which any band would be. But I believe that when he had that moment at Madison Square Garden, that something psychologically happened with him where from that point on, it started going down. The excitement, the thrill started going down. I mean, where do you go from there? Now there's some crazy bird in the background. So after the band finished that leg of the North American tour, after the shows at Madison Square Garden, they had an additional leg in Britain. And I believe that in that last leg of that tour, that Elton realized the decline in his euphoria and excitement. And I believe Elton, being the sort of compulsive and easily bored guy that he is, that he was starting to formulate in his mind, I want to do something different. I want a different band. So anyway, they finished that leg of the tour. Elton decides to fire the band. Obviously, these guys had made a few albums together, but Elton's the kind of guy that, he would go in and play his parts and sing his parts and then take off. He couldn't even stand to hang around in the studio while the band was finishing all the cool background vocals and overdubs and guitar parts and stuff like that. Very impatient guy. I think he just made a brash decision. I want to do something different. One of the other reasons why I believe that the boredom was setting in is what happened following him firing the band. He went in and recorded Rock of the Westies with this new band, and by all accounts, they were doing coke like madmen through that entire session. So anyway, they're doing Rock of the Westies, they're coked out. The album is mediocre. I mean, there's a handful of great songs on there, but it's certainly not on the level of what he had just done. So then they go on this massive tour. Elton with his newly revamped big band, 1 million people on stage, background singers, all this excitement going on. But if you listen to the shows, and I have pretty much bootlegs of every show from those tours, Elton's voice sounds terrible. It sounds the weakest that he had ever sounded up to that point. The guys that were in the band, they talk about how great that band was. They did sound great on record. On Rock of the Westies and Blue Moves, the band sounded fantastic, but live, it was just a mess. It was just too many people on stage making too much noise. It was almost like a competition between keyboards, guitar, two guitar players, just a mess. Elton goes on this massive tour with his new band. Now, this is the absolute peak of Elton's fame. That tour, when he played Dodger Stadium, that massive, legendary show, Elton was absolutely number one. There was no one in the world that can touch him. He was the biggest star in the world. He's going to do this incredible show in Dodger Stadium. He flies his family and his friends and the people who work for his record label out from England to California to watch the show. It's this big celebration. There's all kinds of famous people that he admires, Cary Grant and all these famous celebrities. That same week, he's given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And if you watch the footage of that, he could not look more unhappy. He looks cynical. He's rolling his eyes like this is the stupidest thing in the world. Here he is at the absolute pinnacle, peak of his career, and he's just unhappy. And then later on that week, he takes a handful of pills and tells his family that he wants to die. He jumps in the pool and makes a big scene. He was profoundly unhappy. This is a guy that's basically coming down off the high of fame, which holds all kinds of implications to it. It means that the thing that he was so hungry for, he already has it. It's gone. There's no more challenge. When people oftentimes hit the success that they've been longing for, it's a total disappointment. And I believe that that's ultimately why Elton fired Dee and Nigel, is because after he played the show with John Lennon, he started feeling that euphoria ramp down. And I believe his first thought was, if I change this band, that's going to fix that. It's going to bring that back up to where it was before. What he discovered is that it didn't fix it. It continued to go down and down and down. And by the end of that tour with the big new band touring Rock of the Westies, he had fired the entire band. He basically said on the last show, he said, I'm done. We're not doing any more shows. So it's a pretty clear indication. Lennon show down to the end of the Rock of the Westies tour. So Dee and Nigel, to me, were just the casualties. They were the first casualties of that downward spiral. Yes, Elton wanted a new sound, but really what it was about was he was trying to recapture that excitement. Blue Angels. If you listen to the new band, the big expanded band, they made some really cool recordings. Rock of the Westies and Blue Moves both have some incredible music on it. But it's very different music from what the Elton John band was producing. It's a completely different thing. And when you listen to that band playing all of his previous hits, they just don't sound the same. Roger Pope, he's deliberately trying to give things his own flavor, and it changes the style and the feel of those songs. The classic catalog of songs recorded by the Elton John band never sounded the same again. And really, Elton's music has never sounded the same, regardless of what lineup he has. The only time it sounds the same is when he reunites with Dee and Davey and Nigel. That's the only time it was back in that special place. Listen to the big new band playing the Captain Fantastic album at the Wembley show when they played the entire album. It's awful. It doesn't sound anything like the record. It doesn't have any of the nuance and the magic and the flavor of Captain Fantastic. It basically just sounds like a bunch of assembled studio musicians who learned the material, and they're basically just saying, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it my way. You know, I'm a huge fan of Captain Fantastic, a huge fan of Elton John, and I can't even listen to that Wembley recording of Captain Fantastic. It's just not the same. And it is so dramatically different that it's off-putting to me. I don't like listening to it. The very first concert I ever went to was when I was 12 years old. I went to see Elton John with the new big band. It was the Rock of the Westies tour. I was a huge Elton fanatic, as you all know by now. I have to say, even as a kid, I was wanting to see Davey and Dee and Nigel and Ray on stage. I got Davey and I got Ray, but immediately from the beginning of the show, it was like, this isn't the same. This just isn't the same band. It's not the same music. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't have the same vibe or the same magic to it. So even as a kid, I was discerning that. So anyway, that's my take. I hope it resonates with some of you out there. I'm sure some of you probably have thought the same thing. But I've had so many people asking me this question, I decided to make a video about it. So thank you for watching. This is John Blackstone. I want to thank you so much for the support I've been getting. My channel has basically just exploded. It just has shot through the roof. I finally hit that peak in the YouTube algorithm to where more people are seeing my videos. So I'm very excited, and I thank you for subscribing. Please hit like on my videos. It really helps. And until next time, this is John Blackstone with Only Kid with the Camera. Cheers.
1, 2, 3, 4.